Coming up, Eddie Howe breaks his silence on the Sandro Tonali situation, and Newcastle train through the storm to prepare for Crystal Palace. So there was only going to be really one subject that Eddie Howe was going to get asked today, and in a packed press conference, I think there was probably about 30 or more questions about Sandro Tonali going into this game against Crystal Palace. What we did, get confirmed was that Tonali is available for the game against Palace, and Eddie Howe hinted that he's going to have a chance of playing in the game, and he trained well. He trained a couple of times, and from his point of view, he said he's thrown his arms around the player in support. So public backing for Tonali on a week where he's been subjected to front page treatment in Italy about the betting investigation that's going on over there. Eddie also talking about how the player had conducted himself very well in training and around his teammates. Said, while it's obviously been an emotional time for Tonali, it's one where he feels that the player has done well enough to play in the game. It's a call that he's going to still have to make, given everything that's come with it. But I asked Eddie about, the prospect of him playing in the game, and would that ignite the crowd in a positive way? The first tackle or pass or shot from Tonali in the game would probably get a big roar given the support of the supporters. And he agreed with that and feels that, the crowd, like the club, will get behind the player. And he pointed out that, this is a young player that's still only 23, has got a lot to learn on and off the field, and this has been a difficult time for him. But no mention on when Newcastle will hear about the ban. They're not thinking about that. All they're focused on is 3 points against Crystal Palace and the prospect of Tonali being a part of that. So a big press conference is taking place at Benton amid this unbelievable storm that's brewing outside, goalposts flying around, but Newcastle decided to train through it. So I think for me that was a real sign of where the club are this week. I think they've had some controversy, certainly with the Sandro Tonali situation, but ultimately they've got to battle through it. That's what football's about, and that's pretty much what Eddie Howe's mantra was in his press conference today. Inevitably, he was going to get asked many questions. I think every journalist was going to use one of the couple of questions that they get to ask Eddie Howe about Tonali. Some of them in different ways as well. But look, I thought he coped impeccably with it. It certainly looks easy when managers are sitting on stage, but I bet it's probably not when there's probably 30 or 40 people in the room, more people in there than usual, asking questions one after the other. It went on for 35 minutes. It was about as long as it normally is. It's normally a bit more light-hearted than that, talking about Newcastle wins or goals or awards. But this one was very different in that Eddie Howe was, basically being pushed on a lot of Tonali issues. Should Newcastle have known more about this when they signed the player? Should more homework have gone in? Should the player be punished more? It was many questions along those lines, but I thought Eddie Howe dealt with each and every one of them absolutely brilliantly. Eddie Howe was asked, one of the big things he was asked about was, whether Newcastle were going to take legal action against AC Milan. He said all of that, it feels it's too early to even, go into that. All he was talking about was preparing for this game against Crystal Palace. He said that he believes that Tonali is in a good frame of mind, that he could potentially play in this game. He's trained a couple of times this week, and he will pick the team based on what happens in training. So it's going to be interesting to see that team sheet, whether Eddie Howe goes through with that or not. One thing he did say to me during the press conference was, I asked him, could it be significant? Could it ignite the crowd that little bit more? The first touch of the ball that Tonali gets, the first tackle, shot, pass. We've all been there before, and it can ignite the St James's Park atmosphere even more. So And he basically went along with that, saying that, you know, the crowd, the love, the warmth could be huge for Tonali going forward. We don't know when this ban is going to be imposed on Tonali, and I think really, if it is in the next week or so, he wants those memories to take into what's going to be a sustained period of not playing. So whenever that will be, we'll have to wait. But for now, I think Eddie Howe may be keen on giving Tonali that final taste until that ban happens of being at St James's Park and being on the pitch and feeling the warmth of the crowd. And, you know, there was just a real feeling in the press conference that this is just potentially a blip for Tonali. He can come back. He has got a future. Eddie Howe was asked, would he, you know, consider, you know, selling the player, and he said no. He's got a future here. We want him here. We hope he wants to be here, and basically continually supporting the player through this press conference, continually showing what a great manager he is, because throughout his time at Newcastle, I think there's only really been one major incident where a players end up going to the reserves, and you know, that being Ryan Fraser. Apart from that, every player has got on well with Eddie Howe when they haven't been in the team, when perhaps the future's been in doubt. They've left the club on good terms. No one's really left and had anything bad to say. So I think that keeping that sort of team spirit going, keeping that kind of club ethos there. Eddie Howe's done it all the way through since he took over. And, you know, he talked about support networks. He says there's been a big effort gone in with Tonali in the last few days since this emerged. There hasn't been a big inquest. It's been, how can we help the player? Newcastle continuously adding to their player liaison staff, making that a bigger network. And basically Eddie Howe saying today that this is just the start of a process of getting Tonali back to his very best at Newcastle. And I think that was telling. Was this whole thing a surprise for Newcastle? I mean, there's been so much talk about should they have done their homework. Eddie Howe said he was completely shocked by it. He took a phone call from Dan Ashworth. Dan Ashworth was totally shocked by it. Eddie Howe emphasising in the press conference that you can't know everything about every single player. It's impossible to know. There's always going to be little details that you're not aware of. And this has been the case with Tonali. And the big thing is that he's still a very young player. He's on a long contract. This is only going to be a small portion of his career at Newcastle. But look, Eddie Howe, 100% behind Tonali, feels the crowd will be as well, feels that the player's still got a future. So that was all the Tonali stuff. There was other things to talk about in the press conference. The fact that Joe Linton is back and he's in contention for this game against Palace. The fact Botman has had a good fortnight and he's close. He didn't say he was going to play or not. He wasn't giving anything away on that. But he said he's had a good fortnight. Lewis Miley, glandular fever, going to possibly be another couple of weeks out with that. So positives on that front. Joe Willock getting better as well. Newcastle have got a lot of quality players to rely on. Each player's going to have to fight for the place. This game against Crystal Palace, unpredictable Palace, that's what I called them in my preview. They beat Manchester United 1-0 away in their last away game. They've had home draws, 0-0 draws against Fulham and Nottingham Forest, that awful game that was on the last Saturday before the break, televised game. So unpredictable. Newcastle, couple of draws with them last season as well, couldn't find a way through. So it's going to be an interesting one. But I just think with the way the crowd is going to be, with everything that's happened, I think Newcastle are going to be fired up for this. I think they're going to win this game. And hopefully Tonali is going to have a day to remember at Newcastle, regardless of what happens in the future. That's what everyone seems to be focusing on at Newcastle going into it.